them. They treat us like aliens, like gods that exist far from their own experiences. We are their experience, and they are ours. Our existence, our breath, our neighbors, and our purpose. Some of them call this life. I call it change. They call it God. We call it love. It matters so little that their God and their gods will not say it one way or the other. They live. They breathe. We exist. We observe. Perspective would have us be odd fellows, but to the initiated, such trivia becomes a key. Oh, I see. The time has come again. The people of Karona will now choose their new path.
And so it is that when harmony wanes, the tsunami waxes, this time precipitated by a red-hot portal, brazen with the aberrations of local minds and contempt for the old, mixed with lust for the new. This planet's certainties have been scourged by ill intent and lack of honor. Not your planet, but this one. From orbit, Karona looked like a wounded jewel, smaller than Earth, larger in ambition, red-brown beneath its clouds, blue where its oceans held the light. 60% of its surface was water, the rest was continent, crater, desert, forest, machine, and memory. Karona was an ancient planet. Not old in the way stones are old. Stones merely endure. Karona had remembered, then forgotten, then remembered wrongly. Beneath its deserts were buried rails that had once moved whole cities. Beneath its oceans were towers built by hands that had never breathed fresh air. Beneath its mountains were engines still humming for masters whose names had dissolved before the current age had invented writing. Karona had risen before. Karona had fallen before. And as was so often the case with young worlds, every generation believed history had been waiting just for them. The people of Karona were human. Not human as metaphor, human as blood, human as hunger, as argument, as song. They were Homo sapiens Karona, seated long ago by a patient intelligence that left behind no monuments, no scripture, and no apology. They were cousins to Homo sapiens Terra, though neither world knew the other existed. Two branches of the same strange animal, growing in different gardens, making different mistakes beneath different suns. Karona existed in K-Pacha number 1, the same mortal universe as Earth. The same great field of distance, fire, birth, gravity, dust, appetite, prayer, war, laughter, and misunderstanding. But Karona lived in a distant galaxy, far beyond the reach of Earth's radio noise, far beyond Earth's myths, its governments, and for the moment, far beyond their ability to embarrass themselves in front of their neighbors. Karona had 5 billion people, temporary bodies, souls in motion, lives pretending not to be brief. They were watched. Not closely, not cruelly, and also not with the eager hand of a god over insects. They were watched at distance by a medium-energy galactic republic composed of many peoples, many shapes, many histories, and at least 700 official definitions of the word patience. The republic called Karona a protected observational planet. The younger observers called it a cosmic zoo. The older observers corrected them, but not always quickly. Karona was not ready for visitors or neighbors. It was barely ready for itself. 30 years before the Dark Awakenings, 6 great powers dominated the planet. 2 of them were recently gone. Aster Vale and Kor Masan had once been allies so close that diplomats called them the twin hands of the future. Together they built orbital towers, shared shipyards, traded research, and promised their children that the sky would belong to the both of them. Then files went missing, the data was corrupted, research vanished, accusations hardened into doctrine, and then that doctrine sharpened into artillery. By the end, Aster Vale and Kor Masan did not merely defeat one another, they erased one another's ability to continue being nations. Their cities burned, their satellites fell, their children inherited maps full of ash. And yet, the war stopped suddenly. too suddenly. Historians, economists, generals, and priests all gave different reasons as to why, none of them entirely right or wrong. The truth was that something had passed over Karona. Not just peace. Peace is just a treaty. What passed over Karona was harmony. Brief, imperfect, but real. The shooting stopped. The remaining powers looked at the ruins and for one rare moment understood the same thing. No one had won. That shared understanding became the Karona Charter, a planetary council and tithe system for reconstruction. It put restrictions on orbital militarization, as well as allowing for mutual inspection rights and emergency communication laws between all the nations. And, most importantly, the promise that no single power would ever again be allowed to make the sky into a weapon. And promises are easy to carve into stone, harder to keep in blood. And so 30 years passed, and harmony remained. Not cleanly, not constantly, not without lies, but long enough for the 4 surviving superpowers to grow comfortable beneath it, long enough for old fears to put on new clothes, and for ambition to call itself recovery, long enough for envy to pick up the phone. The first surviving power was the Orison Concord, a democracy of highlands, storm valleys, black mountain cities, deep archives, and magnetic scars beneath the crust. Orison had once been loud. Its universities debated everything, its artists mocked everyone. Its elections were festivals of speeches, insults, music, food, legal challenges, and elderly voters refusing to leave public halls until someone explained the budget in plain language. Then the Great War ended, and Orison withdrew. Not from the world entirely, it still attended worldly councils, it still paid its tithes, it still sent doctors, engineers, teachers, and reconstruction auditors. But something inside Orison had closed its doors. Its capital, Hallam Voss, sat between 3 mountain chains where auroras sometimes appeared even at noon. Children there grew up watching color move across the sky like unfinished thought. Beneath Hallam Voss, deeper than any public map admitted, Orison scientists had built the Listening Vault. The vault was not a bunker. It was a question made of machines. It had been built around an ancient magnetic anomaly, a wound in the planet's bones that made ordinary physics behave with occasional embarrassment. Most days, the vault produced nothing but static, heat, and arguments about funding. But when Karona faced a certain direction in space, when its rotation aligned the anomaly with a narrow region beyond the outer moons, the vault heard voices. Not Karonan voices, not human voices. The first transmission had arrived 12 years after the Great War. At first, it was a pulse, then a rhythm, then mathematics, intention, with meaning. The aliens did not name themselves at first, and so Orison called them the Far Speakers. And after several months of confusion, the Far Speakers began to call their Orison counterparts the local minds inside the Red Gravity Garden. Nobody in the Orison think tank liked that title, but the scientists admitted it was accurate. The second surviving power was the Vare Dominion. Where Orison hid in mountains, Vare stretched across dry continents and mineral plains. Its cities were built wide and low against the heat, their towers shielded by gold-white panels that reflected the sun. Vare was old power, old banners and old ceremonies, old families pretending the word old meant right. The Dominion was ruled by Sava Rin, last chair of the sovereign table, keeper of the civil flame, mother of continuity, and, less officially, the final autocrat on Karona. She did not call herself dictator. Dictators rarely do. She called herself a necessary center. Her speeches were calm. Her hair was silver. Her uniforms were plain. She preferred rooms without windows and advisors who knew when not to finish sentences. Her daughter, Illyria Rin, had been raised to inherit history rather than understand it. Illyria had her mother's face, her father's charm, and a heart that still possessed enough softness to be a liability. Zava considered this unfortunate, though not incurable. Vare's people were not evil. No people are that simple. There were teachers in Ver who taught forbidden books with careful smiles. There were doctors who treated dissidents and soldiers alike. There were workers who built roads they would never be allowed to name. There were children who had never seen a free election, but still understood unfairness when it entered a room. The Dominion endured because it had taught its people to confuse stability with obedience. It endured because fear can become ordinary if fed in small enough portions. It endured because other nations had allowed it to endure. That would become important. The third surviving power was the Pelagic Union. Pelagos was less a country than a civilization of coastlines. Island chains, floating cities, reef towers, storm platforms, archipelago parliaments, and continental ports all bound together by water, trade, medicine, and an almost religious suspicion of secrecy. Pelagic citizens loved committees. They loved public hearings. They loved announcing that no one was above review, then creating 3 additional review boards to review that review. Other nations mocked Pelagos for being slow, and Pelagos mocked them for being on fire. It possessed the strongest medical sciences on Karona, the most resilient food networks, and a fleet that could move 500,000 people before breakfast if the weather was feeling polite. Its leader, Speaker Malin Oru, had no throne, no palace, and no patience for dramatic men. She governed from a circular hall in the floating capital of Velamar, where the floor gently shifted with the ocean beneath it. Foreign ministers often found this unsettling. Speaker Oru considered that a benefit. The fourth surviving power was the Sarn Directorate. Sarn occupied the equatorial belt of Karona, where deserts became factories, factories became cities, and those cities became bargaining tables. It was officially a republic of economic councils. In practice, the Sarn was an oligarchy wearing a worker's coat. Its directors controlled transit, heavy manufacturing, orbital fuel, mass agriculture, and the magnetic strip infrastructure that held much of Karona's communication web together. Sarn did not inspire love. It inspired dependence. And dependence, Sarn believed, was more reliable. Its supreme coordinator, Tavik Jor, was not a tyrant. He had no appetite for speeches or statues. He was a thin man with tired eyes who believed civilization was a machine, and machines did not care whether their gears felt represented. His generals disagreed with him on many issues. Lately they had begun disagreeing with him in private rooms without recording devices. This is often how history clears its throat. 30 years after the Great War, the 4 powers remained bound by the Karona Charter. Bound, but not united. The charter required each power to contribute tithes. Tithes of material, labor, energy, medicine, research, and defensive coordination. The tithes rebuilt ruined lands, stabilized old war zones, and funded shared technologies. But harmony had aged, and aged harmony is often mistaken for weakness. Ver began asking why Orison proposed so many new planetary laws without increasing its tithe duties. Sarn began asking why Pelagos received so much reconstruction credit when Sarn transported most of the materials. Pelagos began asking why Ver's orbital launch schedule no longer matched its public filings. Orison began asking questions it could not yet prove it had right to ask. Questions about the Great War, about stolen research, and about corrupted data. About whether Aster Vale and Koromasan had truly destroyed themselves, or whether someone had found a way to make 2 allies afraid of each other at precisely the right time. None of them knew that harmony had already begun to fade. None of them knew that when harmony leaves, it does not always leave quietly. Sometimes the absence of harmony is enough to unleash a tsunami. And this tsunami was marked as a bright red priority in both the minds and the instruments of the leaders of Orison and the far speakers. Inside the listening vault, Director Levin Athos watched a transmission crawl across the chamber wall in blue-white symbols. He was old enough to remember when Orison still trusted itself. He had been young during the Great War, young enough to believe the future was owed to him, old enough now to know nothing is owed except consequence. Around him, the vault hummed. Technicians stood at consoles arranged in a crescent around the main signal basin. The basin was not water, though it looked like water. It was suspended, magnetic fluid reacting to transmissions by forming temporary ridges, spirals, and trembling geometric petals. A young analyst named Sarah Kent adjusted her headset. "We have semantic lock," she said. "Partial. Their attention field is stable." Athos looked up. "Put them through." The basin darkened. A voice entered the room. It did not speak Orison, not truly. The vault translated intent more than language, meaning more than grammar. The result always sounded slightly wrong, like a dream trying to be polite.
"Local minds of the Red Gravity Garden,"
said the far speaker.
"Your worry has increased."
Athos folded his hands behind his back.
"Please, new friends, don't forget to like and subscribe."
"Yes."
"Your social pressure is rising."
"Yes."
"Your charter is losing weight."
Athos glanced at Sarah. She did not look away from the basin. "That is our concern," Athos said. "We have reason to believe the Great War may have been influenced by a surviving power." The basin rippled.
"You have said this before."
"We have more evidence."
"You have said this before also."
Athos sighed. Far speakers had many virtues. Comfort was not among them. "We have intercepted Vare deep space activity," he said. "Encrypted directional signaling, not aimed at you." The basin formed a spiral, then collapsed.
"Not aimed at us."
"No."
"Then someone else is listening."
The translation did not present that sentence as alarm. It presented it as recognition. The far speakers did not panic easily. Old civilizations rarely did. They had passed through too many disasters to worship surprise. Athos said, "Do you know who they may be contacting?"
"Not from your local pattern."
"What does that mean?" The basin lifted into 5 arcs, one after another, each bending toward the others before falling apart.
"Not all intelligence arrives through distance. Some arrives through imbalance."
The room grew quieter. Sarah whispered, "Director. Director." Athos raised one hand. He spoke carefully. "You told us once that civilizations usually die before they reach what you call the 5th wall."
"Yes."
"You said 5 conditions must be met to cross it."
"Yes."
"You refused to name them."
"We did not refuse."
"You said we would misunderstand."
"That is a form of kindness."
Athos nearly smiled. Nearly. "Are the conditions related to what you call the constants?" The basin changed. The far speakers hesitated. That was new. The far speakers had paused before. They had recalculated. They had corrected. They had restructured thoughts so Orison could digest it without culturally vomiting. But this was hesitation.
"Yes,"
said the voice. Athos felt the chamber turn around that word. Sarah stopped typing. A junior technician made the sign of the old mountain faith before remembering where he was. Athos said, "Tell us." The basin became still.
"There are patterns we have found in civilizations that survive themselves."
"Survive themselves?"
"The greatest predator of intelligence is intelligence without balance."
Athos closed his eyes for 1 second. The far speaker continued.
We name 4 constants because we have seen 4 recurring powers in all sentient systems we have studied: strife, comfort, entropy, and progress.
Orison's machines recorded the words. Orison's leaders would later argue for 19 hours over whether the far speakers had described philosophy, physics, theology, psychology, or a translation problem. The correct answer was yes.
Strife defines, comfort gathers, entropy returns, progress moves.
Sarah whispered the words as they formed. Athos said, "Are they gods?"
The question is too small.
Are they intelligent?
That question is too narrow.
Are they real?
Yes.
No one spoke. Athos finally asked, "And the 5th one?" The basin trembled. A pattern appeared. Not 5 arcs this time, 4 arcs leaning toward an empty center.
When the 4 are honored together, something else is sometimes seen.
"Harmony," Sarah said before she could stop herself. The basin shivered violently. Athos turned to her. The far speaker answered,
"Some call it that."
Sarah swallowed. Athos faced the basin again. "What happens when it leaves?" Another hesitation. And then,
change.
"What kind of change?"
Local reality may experience a massive event horizon.
And at this, Athos remembered old Orison myths about stars bending under prayers, about cities waking from the same dream, about animals refusing to enter certain valleys because the sky had become too thoughtful. He said, "Define mass event horizon." The basin pulsed.
Our translation has many failures. One name we use is cosmic tsunami.
Sarah's hands froze above her console. Athos stared at the basin. The phrase felt too large for the room, too simple, too dramatic, too accurate. The far speaker continued.
It has always happened. It will happen again. Cycles are not circles to those inside them, but from far enough away, even time develops a shape. When harmony is lost, the wave follows. Some waves are small, some are civilizational, some touch systems, some touch more than systems. Lately, the waves are stronger. Partial theory. Chaos rises where logic fails. Harmony becomes harder to maintain. When harmony breaks under greater entropy, the returning wave carries greater force. We know little, too little. We have seen civilizations touched by it become better, worse, stranger, faster, slower, kinder, crueler, more honest, more dangerous, more duplicitous. It makes true feelings strong. It makes old lies heavy. It can accelerate unity. It can expose rot. It can summon movements before language is ready for them.
"Summon movements?" Athos asked.
Not by command, by recognition.
The basin showed thousands of tiny points moving toward one another. Athos said, "Is Karona experiencing this?" The far speaker answered too slowly.
Possibly.
The room fell silent. Possibly was a terrifying word when spoken by old things. The signal began to distort. Sarah checked the alignment. Planetary rotation is carrying us out of the corridor. We have 90 seconds. Athos stepped closer. What should we do? The far speaker answered.
Do not lie to your people longer than necessary.
Athos stiffened. The voice continued.
Do not worship fear because fear arrived first.
What is causing this anomaly?
The data did not arrive. If something other than us has entered your local pattern, be careful what it wants you to want. Oh, you are not alone.
Athos looked at Sarah. Her face had gone pale. The signal fractured. The basin convulsed. Then the connection died. The chamber became a room again. Machines hummed, people breathed, Karona turned. And above the planet, beyond its outer gravity, a bruise opened in the dark. Meanwhile, in the land of Vare, Sovereign sat alone in a private chamber beneath the Sovereign house. There were no windows, only 3 doors, and 2 guards outside each of them. No recording devices were allowed, no advisors, and no family. Only a black desk, an old chair, and a telephone that was not connected to anything. The phone was an antique, a ceremonial object from the pre-strip age, when sound had moved through wires instead of magnetic lattice relays and encrypted civic bands. Sava had found it in a museum vault 14 years earlier and ordered it brought to her private chamber. She did not know why. At first, she had only looked at it. Then she had touched it. Then, one night, during a rainstorm that never reached the ground, it rang. The first time, she called technicians. They found no power source, no signal receiver, and no wire. No hidden mechanism. The second time, she called no one. By the 6th time, she answered. Tonight, the phone rang again. Sovereign stared at it. It was a stupid sound. Small, mechanical, insistent. A sound from a dead age. She let it ring 7 times. Then she picked it up. Only silence, then breathing. Not human breathing. Something imitating the idea of breathing, because it knew breathing made mortals lean in closer.
Speak,
Sava said. The voice on the phone was warm, almost affectionate.
You are being contained.
Sava's face did not move.
by whom?
By those who fear your ascent.
Names.
You know their names.
I know many names.
You know. The ones that make your hands still. And your decisions inert.
Sava's eyes narrowed. The voice had never given her answers directly, only pressure, image, and suggestion. It spoke like smoke entering a room through a crack. It had told her things before. Small things, first. Where a minister had hid documents. Which general admired her daughter too openly. Which old ally could be turned by praise. Then larger things. Which Aster Veil files to leak. Which Core Masan transmission to corrupt. Which fear to sharpen. Which pride to bruise. Sovereign had not fired the first weapon of the Great War. She had done something more useful. She had taught 2 friends to see each other as thieves. Then she watched them reach for knives. For 30 years Vare had profited from the silence that followed, and yet Sovereign had not felt victorious. Victory should have satisfied her. Instead, it had made the voice louder.
You told me the sky belonged to whoever reached it first.
She said.
The sky, my lady, belongs to whoever is not ashamed to want it.
Wanting is not enough.
No. Wanting is the door. Envy is the hand that opens it.
Sava did not like that word. Envy was peasant language. Envy was for those who lacked discipline. The powerful did not envy. They assessed, they planned, and they acquired. The voice continued.
There are four that hold the living pattern: strife, comfort, entropy, and progress. You can feel it. It is natural.
Sava listened.
Speaking of nature, against those four stand the greeds.
The greeds.
Yeah, the necessary hungers. The spirits that move those too honest to lie still. The spirits such as yourself, sometimes.
What do they want?
What all unfed things want.
And what do they offer?
A pause. Then the voice softened.
A grand journey.
Sava felt for one brief moment that the room had become much larger than itself. The walls seemed farther away. The ceiling seemed higher. The desk seemed like an object she had once seen as a child but never understood.
A journey where?
Through the spirit wave.
Sava's pulse quickened.
How?
You need only awaken the greeds.
Outside the chamber, the guards heard nothing. No ringing, no conversation, and no voices. Only Sava Rin alone in a silent room, holding a dead telephone to her ear. Illyria Rin heard the phone for the first time 3 nights later. Her mother summoned her below the Sovereign house, past the halls where portraits of the Rin line watched from behind filtered glass. Illyria had spent her life being trained to inherit the Dominion. She knew how to greet generals, and how to sign death warrants without using the word death. She knew how to speak of sacrifice while wearing silk. She did not know how to respond when her mother handed her a dead telephone and said,
Listen.
Illyria listened. At first, nothing. Then a sound like breath. Then a voice.
Oh my, if it ain't the offspring. Young continuity. Hello.
Illyria nearly dropped the phone. Sava watched her carefully. The voice did not sound like a monster. That was the problem. It sounded lonely and ancient. It sounded as if it had been waiting for her specifically across impossible distances with impossible patience.
You, my doggies, have lived beneath a small sky.
Illyria looked at her mother. Sava nodded once. Illyria whispered,
Who are you?
A friend. From beyond the wall.
An alien?
If that word comforts you, then yes.
What do you want?
For you, my ladies, to stop being less than you are. My ladies, your people fail you. Your advisors withhold information. And even I find your generals to be ill-incentivized. They want more. You want more. Everyone always wants more. It is perfect. It keeps the world going. Lead your people by their dreams. Give them something to want, and they will march. Give them just enough to dream about, and they will live every day by your name. The time is now. In fact, I think you will find a door has just opened.
It was a cruelly perfect answer. Illyria had spent her entire life being less than something, less than her mother, less than history, less than the future she was told she owed. The voice found that wound and kissed it. Sava Rin believed she had discovered an intelligence in local space. She believed she was negotiating with a power that understood ambition better than the cowards of the Charter Council. She believed Ver would become the first Karonan nation to cross whatever waited beyond the sky. She did not know that she had never spoken to an alien. She had spoken instead to an aberrational manifestation of envy. Not envy entire, never that. Aberrations do not enter mortal space as totalities unless the door is wide, the minds are willing, and the local logic has already begun to rot. This was a fragment, a less than simple pressure. It was a stain with a voice and a hunger wearing mystery. It did not need Sovereign to love it, it needed her to compare. Vare had less orbital reach than Astervale once had, less research freedom than Orison, less medical resilience than Pelagos, and less industrial leverage than Sarn. And of course, less legitimacy than any democracy. Envy fed her those truths until they became unbearable, and then it offered a cure. Not justice or improvement, not patience, but a portal.
Well, look at us, a solid team already.
When harmony faded from Karona, no alarm sounded in mortal rooms, no scripture burst into flame, and no mountains began to speak. No government received so much as a memo. But absence has texture. The first to feel it were not the leaders of the humans, they were animals. In the northern grasslands, herds of horned runners stopped migrating and stood in perfect circles around dry riverbeds. In Pelagos, reef whales rose beside floating cities and sang for 9 straight hours in tones that made human children wake crying without fear. In Sarn's equatorial farms, domesticated harvest birds refused to enter the fields, then returned at dusk, carrying seeds in their beaks and dropping them at the feet of workers. In Vare, desert hounds began sleeping outside the homes of political prisoners. The humans noticed. Then they explained it badly. Humans are gifted at explaining mysteries in ways that preserve their old opinions. After the animals came the dreams. Across Vare, children dreamed of dark figures standing beyond the lights of their homes, not attacking, not speaking, only watching from distances that felt carefully chosen. Across Pelagos, sailors dreamed of black metallic objects falling from portals in orbit, striking the sea without splash, then waiting beneath the waves. Across Sarn, factory workers dreamed of tornadoes descending from holes in the sky, thin and black and impossibly silent, touching down from thousands of miles above, from what seemed like the upper atmosphere. Across Orison, scientists dreamed of massive arms reaching out of a wound above Karona, fingers long enough to cross continents. Some dreamed of monsters rising from the oceans. Some dreamed of oceans rising as monsters. Many dreamed of Karona itself opening one eye. And some, usually adults, dreamed of another Karona. A peaceful one that was healthy. A world of clean cities, living forests, restored seas, patient schools, wise machines, open archives, and technology so advanced that even engineers woke weeping because they did not know whether they had seen science, mercy, or magic. The dream spread faster than any airborne disease. By morning, they had a name. The people called them the Dark Awakenings. Nobody agreed on who named them first. That was probably for the best. The name belonged to everyone immediately, which meant it belonged to no one, which meant it could not be controlled. The people called them Dark Awakenings because fear was the first language they had for what was happening. But not every awakening was dark. Some woke screaming, some woke weeping. Some woke with the sudden, humiliating desire to become better than they had been the day before. The wave did not make saints, that is important. No force, no matter how full of love, can force a mortal heart to become honest. It made true feelings much more powerful, almost tangible, and that was all. For many, truth became compassion. For some, it became grief, and others it became courage. For many, it became a hunger for unity that they had never been taught to name. For others, the truth became resentment, possessiveness, cruel certainty, a sudden need to blame someone before their own conscience found them. When love and logic rise, those who reject them often swing harder toward aberration. Karona began to divide not only by nation, but by reaction. Some people woke wanting to forgive old enemies. Some woke wanting to punish them. Some looked at their governments and felt shame, while others looked at their neighbors and felt ownership. Some looked at the sky and saw a warning. Others saw invitation. Some heard the golden rule and wept. Everyone else heard the same thing and hated it. In the ruins of Astor Vale, survivors gathered at memorial walls and left food for strangers. In former Coruscant territory, rival families who had refused to speak for 30 years began repairing each other's roofs. In Sarn, workers formed night circles to protect immigrant districts from militia raids. In Pelagos, doctors opened clinics without paperwork and dared their review boards to stop them. In Orison, students surrounded Parliament with banners reading, "Tell us what the mountains heard," in reference to the leadership knowing more than they did. In Vare, something else happened. Small groups began meeting in basements, military warehouses, empty schools, and old civil halls. They did not call themselves cultists, as cultists rarely do. They called themselves the Unfed, and they said that Vare had been denied. They said kindness was a leash, and that unity was a trick invented by weak nations to restrain strong ones. They said the sky had opened because the brave had finally asked for what cowards feared to desire. They painted their doorways red and wore mirrored strips over their eyes. They listened to dead phones. Not all of them heard voices, but enough of them claimed to, in order for a movement to become an uprising. Even the maddest among them weren't just listening to dead phones for no reason. A primordial force was collectively making itself anew on Karona. Envy had found a nation trained to obey, a ruling family trained to want, and a frightened people trained to distrust their own tenderness. Envy began to build a portal. The Charter Council of Karona met in emergency session above neutral water. Speaker Mei Lin Oru of Pelagos arrived in person, refusing projection because she said a leader should feel the floor move during a crisis. Prime Advocate Naylan Vos of Horizon appeared by secure relay from Halem Boss, exhausted by secrecy and increasingly aware that secrecy had become its own form of treason. Coordinator Tavik Jor of Sarn appeared from the Directorate Hall, his image flickering with static, his general standing just far enough behind him to be noticed. Savarin appeared from Vare, calm as polished stone. The council discussed nightmares first because nightmares were safe to discuss, then communications lag, and then the riots, about unauthorized orbital launches, then Vare's concealed deep space activities, Orison's unexplained power diversions into the mountain grid, then Pelagos's emergency medical seizures of private data, then Sarn's military deployments inside its own capital. Every nation had a grievance, and each one had a secret. They all wanted transparency from the others before offering their own. That is how dying systems negotiate. Sava Rin listened more than she spoke. Her daughter, Illyria, stood beyond projection range, watching. The phone had rung twice that morning. Their special friend had told them that Orison was hiding alien contact. That was true, they just didn't know it. It had told them Pelagos possessed forbidden tissue reading technology, which was also true. It had told them Sarn's military was preparing to overthrow its civil directorate, and that was nearly true, and many had suspected it. Truth is useful to corruption. A lie that contains no truth starves quickly. Envy had fed Sava and Illyria true things arranged in poisonous order. During the council, Orison accused Vare of preparing orbital intimidation platforms, and Vare accused Orison of secret alien collaboration. Pelagos demanded shared anomaly data, while Sarn demanded tithe relief. At this, the old charter shook. But suddenly, the sky pulsed. At first, the leaders thought it was a network failure. Then every projection went white. Across Karona, the gravitational anomaly intensified. Satellites screamed in frequencies no human ear could actually hear. Magnetic strip towers overloaded. Public networks froze, as well as private ones. Military bands tore into static. For 8 seconds, the planet was more silent than it had been in 200 years. Then, the sky continued to change. On the side of Karona facing the anomaly, color spread across the upper atmosphere in vast ribbons: violet, green, gold, blue and red, and colors the eye received but the mind refused to name. Some people even stopped rioting to stare at it. Soldiers lowered their weapons, children pointed, prisoners pressed their faces to windows, leaders forgot prepared statements. For one breath, Karona looked upward together. And then the color vanished, and the world discovered that its communications were wounded, not dead, not exactly yet, but unreliable. The magnetic strip network, more advanced than anything Homo sapiens Terra had built and less resilient than anyone on Karona wanted to admit, began collapsing in regional seizures. Cities could speak to nearby cities, and armies could speak to their nearby fellows. Families, however, could only sometimes reach each other, and sometimes not. The planetary web, proud jewel of Sarn engineering, became a stuttering ghost. Karona was not helpless. As their hospitals continued, water flowed in most regions. Food did not spoil all at once, of course, but uncertainty is one of fear's favorite doors. By evening, unrest returned. This time, it was not only about nightmares, it was about silence. No one knew what other nations were doing, or which rumors were true. No one knew whether the anomaly was natural, alien, divine, military in nature, or punishment. Different regions named the event in different ways. Pelagic scientists called it the color break. Sarn engineers called it the magnetic collapse, appropriate enough. Orison students called it the mountain silence. Ver state media called it foreign sabotage. The unfed called it the opening mercy. Children called it the pretty sky and then asked why adults looked so afraid. Each of these names was wrong, but every name was now useful. And amidst all this uncertainty, a light began to shine. A social one. A new movement called Undivided arose scattered and began to connect almost immediately. Not as an army, not as a party, and definitely not as one group, but as many groups. A pelagic doctor refusing to turn away Ver refugees became undivided before she knew the word. A Sarn factory crew protecting a neighborhood library from militia fire became undivided before they made a banner. An Orison teacher reading banned Ver poetry to frighten children became undivided before anyone called it treason. A former Ver officer opening prison gates and ordering his soldiers not to shoot civilians became undivided before he understood he had chosen a side. They were not united by ideology at first, they were united by recognition. The wave had made their true feelings much stronger, and their one true feeling was this. Karona had been one world long before its government admitted it. Their slogan appeared first on a broken wall in the ruins of Kor Masan: Greater Harmony. Greater Harmony. Greater Harmony. Then in Pelagos, written across a hospital ship, Greater Harmony. Then in Orison, sung by students outside Parliament, Greater Harmony. Then in Sarn, painted on factory shutters, you guessed it. In Ver, whispered in prisons, scratched beneath tables, hidden inside children's drawings, and carved into the back of a statue of Sovereign, Greater Harmony stood there as well. The phrase spread faster than the network that can no longer carry it. This is how the old powers knew it was dangerous to their old ideas. The listening vault regained contact with the far speakers during a narrow alignment window, but the signal was damaged. The gravitational anomaly interfered with the corridor, bending the transmission as if space itself had become suspicious. Director Athos, Prime Advocate Vos, Analyst Sarah Kent, and 3 members of Orison's emergency cabinet stood inside the vault while the basin fought to hold shape. The far speaker's voice arrived in fragments.
Your local pattern is under strain.
Athos spoke. We know.
No. You measure effects. You do not know strain.
Vol stepped forward. Is this the event you described?
Possible.
Volz exhaled sharply. That is not enough.
It is what we have.
You are older than us.
Yes.
You have crossed the 5th wall.
Not completely.
You speak with other civilizations.
Yes.
You observe patterns across systems.
Yes.
And still you tell us, possible. The basin flattened.
Age does not make mystery obey.
That silenced Vos. Sarah looked at the transmission data.
There are emotional anomalies across the population.
She said.
Mass dream convergence, sudden cooperative behavior, sudden violent behavior, local animal response, magnetic disruption, gravitational distortion, organized unity movements appearing independently.
The far speaker answered.
Consistent.
With what?
With the wave we named, the cosmic tsunami.
Athos said, You told us the constants are real.
Yes.
How do we honor them? The basin brightened, then dimmed. The far speaker seemed almost sad.
You do not honor constants by naming them. Strife must be given purpose. Comfort must be shared. Entropy must be accepted. Progress must be guided. When one is starved or worshipped as if above the others, balance breaks.
Vos whispered, Harmony fades.
Yes.
And when harmony fades,
the wave returns.
Sarah asked.
Is the wave trying to help us?
Another pause. The answer came slowly.
We do not know if harmony intends.
That sentence stayed in the vault long after it was spoken. The far speaker continued.
We know only that after harmony leaves, love and logic must regain themselves. Some receive them, some reject them. Those who reject them often turn harder toward aberration.
Athos said, Aberration. The basin darkened.
Domination, wrath, envy. We have many names for these. They are not constants. They are mortal confusion, fed until they learn to wear a shape.
Vos turned away from the basin. Orison had suspected many things about the Great War. It had suspected Vair sabotage. It had suspected Sarin profiteering, as well as pelagic concealment. It had not suspected that evil could become local weather. Athos asked, Can Aberration open a portal? The basin shook violently.
Yes.
To where?
Not where, but what.
The connection began to tear. Sarah shouted that the anomaly was spiking. Athos stopped closer to the basin. What should we do? The far speaker answered.
Do not let envy choose your future.
The signal failed. The basin collapsed. Above the vault, Halem Vos shook. Far away, Vair's dead telephone rang in every room of the sovereign house at once. Envy calls, and some doth answer. Sovereign died standing, or at least that is what the public record would say. It would say she suffered a private medical collapse while preparing an address of reassurance to the Dominion, that her final thoughts were with her people, and that continuity endured. The truth was less useful. Sovereign stood in her private chamber holding the dead telephone while every antique line in the sovereign house rang at once. Phones in museum cases, phones in servant archives, phones in sealed rooms, many phones with no wires, phones built for ceremonies, built before Sava's grandmother's grandmother was born, all of them ringing. Illyria Wren stood frozen in the doorway. Her mother smiled, not with happiness, with triumph. "It is here," Safa whispered. The air behind her desk opened, not visibly at first. First came pressure, then an intense cold. Gradually the smell of salt, iron, and old flowers rotting beneath metal. Then a red line appeared in the room, vertical and thin. Illyria stepped backwards. Through every ringing device in the palace, the voice of the phone spoke through.
Hello again. I couldn't help but call. I noticed something. Needed something. Well, need something. It's you.
Sava Rin laughed once, then her body stiffened. For one moment, something looked through her eyes that had never been human. It saw Illyria. It loved nothing about her. It wanted everything she might envy. It wanted everything that she might have. Then, Sava Rin collapsed. When guards entered, they found Illyria kneeling beside her mother's body, all phones silent. The room cold enough to frost the floor. The red line was gone. Vare State Media announced Sava's death within the hour. Illyria Wren assumed emergency authority. The Dominion mourned because it was required to mourn. Some mourned sincerely while others pretended. Some celebrated quietly and hated themselves for being afraid to celebrate loudly. The unfed gathered in hidden rooms and said the mother of continuity had not died. She had simply opened a new path. Pelagos requested access to the body for an international autopsy. Vare refused. Pelagos requested tissue samples under charter emergency law. The Dominion delayed. Then Pelagos threatened sanctions, and the Dominion sent limited samples. Speaker Oru received them in silence. The Pelagic Union did not tell the other powers everything it could do. No nation does. Hidden beneath Velamar was a facility called the Quiet Laboratory. It housed technologies too useful to destroy and too dangerous to admit. There, pelagic scientists performed what they called a minor autopsy. Not of the whole body, only fragments. Blood, skin, a sliver of gray matter no larger than a grain, and nerve tissue. The samples were placed beneath a resonance scanner, originally designed to detect memory trauma in deep-sea divers exposed to the ancient ruins of Karona. The machine began its work. At first, the results looked impossible. Then they looked worse. Chief Examiner Rune Vale replayed the scan 3 times. Speaker Oru watched from behind glass.
What I'll be looking at?
She asked. Rune did not answer quickly. Scientists are often accused of arrogance. In truth, most of them spend their lives being humbled by their own instruments. Finally, he said, "This tissue shows pattern stress."
Disease?
No.
Poison?
No.
Then what?
Rune looked up from the display. Influence. Oru's face hardened.
Define that.
I can't.
Try.
He swallowed. It appears as though portions of her nervous system were responding to signals that were not entering through the biological senses. Oru stared at him. Outside the laboratory, the ocean moved beneath the city. Rune continued. There are structures in these samples consistent with repeated hallucinatory episodes, but not random ones, seemingly directed ones. Oru said nothing. Rune magnified the scan. Speaker, I think she was receiving something.
From the anomaly?
I don't know.
From aliens?
I don't know.
What do you know?
Rune looked at the tissue map, at the burned pathways where thought had been pulled into shapes no healthy mind should hold. I know, he said, that whatever touched her made her desires seem like truth to her. Speaker Oru ordered the findings sealed for 12 hours. She would later regret the delay. Not because delay caused the war was already coming. She regretted it because truth, once delayed, rarely arrives with clean hands. Illyria Wren inherited the Dominion at the precise moment that it was beginning to split beneath her very feet. Her mother's ministers demanded continuity. Her military demanded emergency powers. The unfed demanded revelation. And her own people wanted answers in a nation that was designed and conditioned to punish questions. Illyria slept for only 2 hours and 3 whole days. When she slept, she dreamed of a red ship waiting behind her eyelids. When she woke, the dead phone rang. At first, she refused to answer. Then, riot spread through the western labor belts of Ver. Not long after, the news broke that 3 mega-prison facilities had been abandoned in total by their prison guards. Then, a Dominion orbital platform stopped responding to command and began transmitting a red doorway symbol across emergency bands. Then, the phone rang again. Illyria answered. The voice sounded weaker than before, or perhaps hungrier.
Illyria, your mother was so brave.
Illyria gripped the phone.
My mother is dead.
Death is a door for those too small to become gates. Isn't that consolation to you?
What are you?
I am what your world has been denied.
Are you an alien?
Illyria repeated her old suspicion, but she had no idea that ill intent and raw excess emotion could coalesce into active aberration.
I am what waits when the unworthy hold the sky to themselves.
Illyria closed her eyes.
You said you would help us.
Facilitating change, my lady. I am helping.
My people are rioting.
Because they have been taught to want too little out of life.
They are afraid.
Because fear is the first honesty of the unfed.
What do you want from me?
The voice softened.
Oh. Well, I'm glad you asked. I want you to finish what your mother began.
Illyria did not understand, not fully, but envy did not require full understanding. It required only consent, shaped as curiosity. Illyria ordered Vare's orbital systems brought to maximum readiness. She ordered loyal regiments into the capital. She ordered the arrest of charter inspectors, even as they offered to leave peacefully. She ordered that all discussions of the unfed be suppressed, which immediately made the unfed more powerful in the minds of her own people. She convinced herself she was preserving the state. That is how many dark doors open. Not with a villain laughing, but with a frightened air insisting there is no other choice. The gravitational anomaly grew. Astronomers across Karona recorded impossible behavior. This anomaly did not orbit Karona, and it did not fall to the planet either. It did not behave like mass, energy, or any known object. It widened when riots intensified. It darkened when Vare propaganda aired. It pulsed when the unfed gathered in large numbers. In Orison, Sarah Kent noticed the correlation first. In Pelagos, Rune Vale noticed it second. A Sarn military AI named Ledger 9 noticed it third and attempted to alert Coordinator Jor, but the message was intercepted by his generals already planning to remove him. In Vare, no official noticed because noticing had become a sign of disloyalty. The anomaly was not merely above Karona, it was listening to it. More precisely, it was listening to the part of Karona that wanted someone else's future. Envy had no interest in destroying Karona outright. Destruction is wasteful when possession remains possible. It intended to use Vare as a gate. Not a gate for armies exactly, not at first, but a gate for influence. For ships that carried thought like disease. For esoteric vessels crewed by mad beings that had long ago mistaken hunger for destiny. A massive incursion would occur on Karona, and it would teach its people to compare every possible version of themselves until only the worst and best versions of themselves remained. The far speakers would later call it an aberrational bridgehead. The people of Karona would call it the Red Knight. Luckily for Karona, the leaders of Undivided would call this the last warning before greater harmony. And they would draw the line of that warning with honor, morality, and steel. The wave continued moving through Karona, not as a visible wall, or as a storm anyone could measure cleanly. It moved through the decisions of the individuals of Karona. A father in Sarn put down a rifle and went home to apologize to his son. A Vare prison cook smuggled keys inside bread. An Orison minister deleted a speech and wrote a confession in its place. A pelagic captain ignored orders and rescued Dominion refugees from a burning harbor. A child in former Aster Vale territory asked why maps mattered if everyone felt anguish in the same language. And so too did the animals of Karona begin to change and show odd behaviors. Highly intelligent predators in the northern forest abandoned their regular killing fields to lead lost children away from fires caused by unfed arsonists. Reef whales guided pelagic ships through dead communication zones. Desert hounds in Vare began howling whenever followers of the unfed movement began to gather nearby. Karona's myriad species could not speak to one another the way many co-evolved species on other planets across the multiverse could. Karonan humans, like Terran humans, understood animals poorly, but loved them anyway. To outside observers, this would have seemed strange. On most planets with intelligent species, some rudimentary form of common communication, or at very least, semi-social cues, would allow species of the same planet to at least understand each other. But similar again to Earth, language was a barrier here. Communication was not always promised. But to Karonans, it felt warm. Love does not always wait for language. Sometimes, in the pressure left behind by Harmony's absence, even misunderstood love becomes part of the rebuilding process. Undivided grew from local protection circles all across Karona into a planetary movement in less than a week. Its members came from every nation. Soldiers, doctors, dock workers, teachers, engineers, and religious leaders, atheists, farmers, and smugglers, refugees, students, parents, and prisoners, even police officers who had refused orders, or criminals seeking redemption. Young adults too young to lead, but old enough to shame cowards. And these Karonans chose their leadership strangely, not by blood or by wealth or by party, and not by who spoke the best. They chose by witness. Those who had sacrificed without demanding praise were asked to lead. Those who wanted power too eagerly were thanked, watched, and placed in logistics. That was how Mara Vin became one of Undivided's first recognized voices. She had been a medic in the Astorvale Reconstruction Zone, born to a Vare father and a pelagic mother, educated in Sarn, trained by Orison volunteers, and nearly killed 3 times carrying random strangers through streets no government had yet claimed responsibility for repairing. She did not want to lead, and that mattered. Her first recorded speech survived only in fragments because the networks were failing, but the words that survived spread everywhere.
We do not need one will. We need one promise. Greater harmony.
The phrase became a banner. Greater harmony did not mean sameness, and that mattered. Karona's civilizations were too distinct, too proud, too wounded, and too self-interested to become one people overnight. Pelagos feared centralized power. Orison feared truth without preparation. Sarn feared the inefficiency of its neighbors more than any injustice. And even the people of Vare, brave enough to join the Undivided movement, had immediately to contend with the unfed. Not all of Karona was ready for planetary unity. Undivided knew this, or at least its wisest members did. But it also knew that if Karona remained 4 suspicious powers tied together only by treaties and fear, another war would eventually come. Maybe not today, and maybe not under these leaders, but too soon if they were to promise their children a good life. The Dark Awakenings, as they called it, had made the truth loud. Karona needed greater harmony before the next ambitious fool mistook the sky for a crown. The followers of the unfed hated the newfound Undivided movement immediately. They called them sentimental traitors, map burners, weaklings, alien puppets, and enemies of their own deserved greatness. In Vare, unfed cells attacked Undivided shelters, burned clinics, and marked any houses with red doorways. In Sarn, selfish factions copied the symbol without understanding it, using it to justify looting and revenge. In Pelagos, frightened officials briefly considered classifying Undivided as an unlawful paramilitary movement until Speaker Oru asked whether feeding refugees had become a military tactic. The officials backed down. Undivided only attempted to bring love, logic, and relief. Which is why in Orison, Parliament debated whether Undivided represented civic renewal or mass emotional contagion. The answer, as usual, was yes. The wave had not removed free will, it had intensified it. Every being now leaned harder toward what it already carried. Love became braver, fear became louder, greed became organized, and envy became avarice, watching through Vare's dead phones and smiling without a mouth of its own. Envy coveted every mouth and the mind attached to it on Karona. The war began after Vare seized 3 charter inspection vessels and executed 2 pelagic observers on charges of spiritual espionage. The phrase made no legal sense, but that did not matter in Vare. By then, the Dominion's court language had begun to rot. Official statements spoke of hidden alien sympathies, stolen destiny, orbital birthrights, impure caution, and the sacred entitlement of the denied. Speaker Oru ordered the pelagic fleet into defensive formation. Prime Advocate Vos, after a closed session with Orison's parliament and the Listening Vault team, released partial truth to his people. Not all, but enough. He admitted that Orison had contacted extraterrestrial intelligence. He admitted the Far Speakers had warned of a rare wave event tied to civilizational imbalance. He admitted that that same anomaly might be related to aberrational spiritual influence. He did not explain the constants fully. Neither did he mention harmony. He did not know enough to do so without turning mystery into propaganda. But he said one honest thing that mattered.
We have hidden the truth because we fear panic. Panic came anyway. Let us not add betrayal to it.
Orison changed after that. Not completely. No civilization heals because one frightened leader tells one overdue truth. But something loosened. Citizens who had been protesting outside Parliament began organizing emergency communication teams. Students volunteered for data relay duty. Mountain monasteries opened old signal towers. The Listening Vault shared sanitized anomaly readings with Pelagos, and Pelagos shared tissue scan findings with Orison. Together, they saw the pattern. Vare was not merely unstable. Something had been using them, influencing them into madness. Speaker Oru and Prime Advocate Bose did not declare war, they declared charter intervention. That was the official term. Everyone else called it invasion. Pelagos brought fleets, medical corps, drone shields, amphibious infantry, and evacuation ships. Orison brought mountain regiments, signal breaker aircraft, field philosophers attached to morale units, and experimental magnetic artillery nobody had admitted ever existed. They did not invade to conquer Vare's people. That distinction mattered to them. It mattered less to the Vare soldiers ordered to defend the Dominion from foreign armies. War began along the western labor belts, then the southern desert launch fields, and soon too the orbital relay stations, and eventually they began to make their approach on the capital. The soldiers and mercenaries of Vare fought hard, and its people were not cowards. Many believed they were defending their home, and many believed the invasion proved every warning Sovereign had ever given. Many had no idea what to believe, and fought because the person next to them fought. Orison fought tactically, Pelagos fought bravely, Vare and its people fought desperately. But the unfed fought differently. They did not defend territory, they defended doorways, red-painted halls, old telephone exchanges, and orbital command shrines. They died in waves using foolish tactics. And they killed without mercy, violating the treaties of the Charter. Many of them mocked their enemies from around corners, only to jump from around and kill or be killed. As the battles continued, more and more of the unfed went berserk, looking up to the red anomaly in the sky with increasing fervor. Some begged their enemies to attack them. Others screamed simply that the ship was coming as they attacked. Above Karona, the anomaly did widen. The red line that had appeared in Sovereign's chamber returned, this time in orbit, longer than continents, thinner than mercy. Astronomers watched the space around it split. The portal opened, and from it emerged one ship, large, red, appearing alien in nature, not sleek, not elegant, and not crude. It looked grown and forged and wounded, as if metal had learned resentment and chosen architecture as its revenge. It entered Karona's system surrounded by gravitational distortion. Every military sensor on the planet tried to lock onto it. Most failed. Those that succeeded produced contradictory data. On some sensors, the ship appeared larger than a city, and on others it appeared smaller than a tower. Some scanners placed it very far away, while others showed it inside the planet. It did not fire, it did not transmit, it did not even attack, it simply moved. For 17 minutes, every war on Karona slowed. As most of the sky spasmed, soldiers looked upward, pilots lost formation, ships drifted at sea, children pointed, and prisoners prayed. The cultists all laughed, while Undivided shelters fell silent. The red ship turned away from Karona and accelerated out of the system with impossible speed. Before anyone could understand it, it was gone. As soon as it left, the gravitational anomaly collapsed. The portal sealed. The sky became a sky again. And in Vare, every dead phone that had been used as Envy's ploy shattered at once. The unfed screamed and howled, not in fear, but in withdrawal. Envy had not entered fully, not enough. The door had opened, one ship had passed through, but the bridgehead had failed. Not because Karona understood the threat, or that its leaders were wise, and definitely not for its weapons being strong enough. The incursion was thwarted because two civilizations, wounded and suspicious and imperfect, had joined their will toward one purpose: to stop the door and save the people under it, to reject the hunger that was using their neighbors. Pelagos and Orison did not know they were expelling Aberration. They thought they were disabling orbital systems and defeating a cult-driven dictatorship. But will has weight. Collective moral force has architecture. When enough minds choose protection over conquest, logic over fear, and love over possession, Aberration loses its grip. As it was wont to do, envy had fed on comparison. For one bright and terrible moment, Karona stopped comparing and acted. That was enough. The Vare capital fell 3 days later. Illyria Wren was found alive beneath the Sovereign House, surrounded by broken phones, feverish, and asking if all the phones were gone yet. She was not executed. This angered many, and it relieved more. Speaker Oru insisted on trial. Prime Advocate Vos agreed. Undivided demanded public truth. The Vare people demanded food, safety, and the right to be confused without being shot. Sarn, watching from the equator, avoided direct war but could not
It's a
avoid
pretty nice
consequence.
screen you got there. Don't forget to like and subscribe with it.
They expected chaos.
Or else.
They found workers, soldiers,
No more
local
content.
councils, and undivided organizers blocking their routes with vehicles, food carts, construction cranes, and old women sitting in the road with tea. The coup failed before it became glorious. Tavik Jor remained Supreme Coordinator for 6 more weeks, then resigned after admitting on public record that a civilization should not depend on one tired man and a frightened accounting class. Sarn did not become just overnight, but it became embarrassed. Sometimes embarrassment is the first mercy available to pride. The Wren dictatorship ended in Vare. Not cleanly, and definitely not peacefully. Not without revenge killings, missing files, burned ministries, desperate loyalists, opportunists, and foreign soldiers making mistakes they would later call regrettable. But it ended. The last autocracy on Karona fell. The unfed scattered. Some became cultists in hiding, and some became mercenaries, but all became ashamed. Some became ordinary people who quietly removed red paint from their doors and pretended they had never believed what they had believed. The Aberration was expelled from its strongest local grip. Not destroyed everywhere, Aberration is rarely so polite. But Envy's bridge had failed and been broken. Karona survived. After the Red Night, no one agreed on what had happened. Pelagos called it an aberrational crisis in classified documents and an illegal Vare militarization event in public statements. Orison called it a mass event horizon in secret and a planetary moral emergency in speeches. Sarn called it a systematic continuity failure because Sarn could survive anything except poetry, apparently. Vare had no single name for it. Some called it liberation, others called it invasion, some called it betrayal, and the old people called it the day the phones died. The far speakers sent one transmission 2 nights after the portal collapsed. It reached Orison through the mobile asteroid relay, distorted but legible.
You survived initial contact.
Director Athos stood in the listening vault with Sarah Kent, Prime Advocate Vos, and a larger circle of officials than secrecy deserved. Athos said, "Was that the event?"
Part of it.
"What was that ship?"
Not enough data.
"Was it aberrational?"
Yes.
"Will more come?"
Possible.
Vos stepped forward. "What do we tell the world?" The far speaker took longer to answer than anyone liked.
The truth you can carry without turning it into a weapon.
Sarah whispered.
That isn't an answer.
The basin pulsed.
It is the only answer that has ever worked.
Then the far speakers offered encouragement. Not comfort, but encouragement. They told Orison that civilizations touched by great balance waves often endured years of instability before greater order emerged. They told them unity movements were common. They told them reactionary, selfish movements were also common. And that wise societies learned to neither worship the wave nor dismiss it. They told them morality and balance were not primitive concepts, but survival technologies discovered again and again by civilizations old enough to bury their arrogance. They told them the constants were not owned by any culture, and that harmony could not be forced. They told them civilizations that found harmony and lost it often slid toward chaos, and that civilizations that found greater harmony sometimes crossed the fifth wall. And they did not explain this fifth wall, not yet. Orison's leaders did not reveal this to the planet, not in this episode of Karona's life. They scrutinized, they debated, and they doubted. They feared mass panic, cult resurgence, religious upheaval, political collapse, and the possibility that telling the truth badly could be worse than silence. They were not entirely wrong. They were not entirely right either. This is how mortals suffer truth, not by lacking it, by holding pieces sharp enough to cut themselves. Across Karona, life continued. The planetary networks recovered in fragments. Magnetic strip towers were rebuilt with new redundancies. Vare opened prisons and discovered people inside them who had been forgotten by everyone except their families and the dark. Pelagic doctors moved through Dominion cities under armed protection, treating people who had been taught to hate them. Orison engineers repaired communication corridors and pretended not to notice when children asked if the mountains were talking again. Sarin workers forced reforms through strikes that were too organized to crush and too morally clear to mock. The ocean settled. The animals returned to stranger patterns. Desert hounds still slept outside certain houses, and reef whales still sang near pelagic cities when leaders lied too publicly. Harvest birds still dropped seeds at the feet of workers who had lost their family in the unrest. No one knew what to make of all that, so they made stories. That is what humans do when truth arrives without instructions. Undivided grew. They were not just one army or one party, one nation. They were a moral pressure. They were local groups that had first formed to oppose the unfed and became neighborhood councils, emergency shelters, truth circles, reconstruction brigades, school movements, border marches, and planetary forums. They demanded that all of Karona unite before another war occurred. Not under Vare, Pelagos, Orison, or Sarn, but under a promise of greater harmony. The four powers resisted them, and of course they did. And why wouldn't they? They wanted to keep their power, and so they wanted to keep the hearts of their people. Vast civilizations do not surrender self-interest because a good slogan makes children cry. Pelagos wanted safeguards, and Orison wanted time. Sarn wanted cost analysis, and Vare wanted dignity after defeat. The former territories of Astor Vale and Cormasan wanted guarantees that no one would use unity as a polite word for occupation. All of these concerns mattered, and that was the problem. Unity is easy when only fools object. Greater harmony would be harder, but now Karona had seen what division allowed. It had allowed dictatorship to survive because removing it seemed inconvenient for so long. It had allowed secrecy to grow because truth seemed dangerous, even to its most brilliant minds. It had allowed envy to speak through dead machines because living people would not speak honestly through working ones for fear of retribution. It had allowed two former allies to destroy each other almost entirely, while the survivors built charters on top of graves and called that enough. Undivided did not claim to solve Karona. Its wisest members knew better. Mara Vin spoke again from the steps of a ruined Vare ministry, surrounded by pelagic medics, Orison signal workers, Sarn labor organizers, and Dominion defectors, as well as children wearing painted strips that said Greater Harmony in 6 regional scripts. This time, more of the recording survived.
We are not asking Karona to become one color.
She said.
We are asking Karona to become one promise. We are not asking nations to forget their dead. We are asking them to stop feeding the living to memories that refuse to heal. We are not asking for sameness. We are asking for greater harmony. If our world can unite long enough to stop a door from opening, then our world can unite long enough to feed every child, teach every mind, protect every shore, and question every leader, as well as bury every throne that demands worship instead of service to the people.
The speech spread. Governments condemned parts of it. Citizens memorized others. What was left of the envy cultist threatened Maravin's life. But children painted her face on walls without permission, and Mara hated all of this. But that helped. In the weeks after the Red Night, Karona remained divided, but it was divided differently. Before, the planet had been divided by borders, old wars, pride, secrecy, and fear. Now, beneath those divisions, another division had been revealed. Those who wanted greater harmony versus those who wanted the old selfishness back. Most people were somewhere between, as human societies usually wind up to be. The Great Wave had not finished its work, it had only made the work visible. Far beyond Karona's moons, beyond the failed portal, and beyond the path of the vanished red ship, observers from the nearby medium-energy galactic republic mentioned at the beginning of the story recorded everything. They watched Orison's secret transmissions, they watched Vare fall, and they watched the red ship leave. They saw Undivided rising. They watched reef whales sing beneath broken satellites. They watched children in Sarn draw the same 5-arc symbol without ever seeing it. They debated intervention and classification. They debated whether Karona had crossed into a threshold. The youngest observers argued that contact should begin immediately, while the oldest observers in the Republic maintained the opposite. Karona had survived an aberrational bridge event and had experienced a local cycle wave event which had become more common in recent cycles. Karona had generated a precious moral unity movement without outside instruction. Karona had overthrown its final dictatorship, though not without blood. The planet had been wounded, but wounds are not invitations, not always. The Republic waited. It would reveal itself soon, but not yet. Karona needed to hear itself before hearing the stars applaud, or warn, or ask for paperwork and classification. The observers logged the planet under a new category, no longer merely protected observational world and no longer merely a cosmic zoo. Karona would become an emerging candidate for higher civilization. The younger observers still called Karona a cosmic zoo, but the older observers corrected them much faster now. Contentment came strangely to Karona, not as happiness, not as peace, not yet, but as a new sensation beneath exhaustion. A sense that the old world had cracked and something honest was growing through it. People still rioted, people still lied, people still stole, and they killed. People clung to flags because flags are easier to hold than uncertainty, and represented old ideas. But something had changed. A Vare child asked a pelagic doctor whether all free countries had so many forms to fill out before operating. A Sarn officer and his comrades resigned rather than clear an undivided shelter. An Orison scientist wrote the phrase "love and logic" in a private notebook, then crossed it out, then wrote it again. A pelagic judge ruled that former Dominion loyalists could not be punished merely for being afraid, or for being Vare. A farmer in former Cormasan territory planted trees over a battlefield where nothing had grown for 30 years. The first tree died, but the second did not. Karona's people did not know harmony had left. They did not know the name the far speakers had given the wave. They did not know that Constance leaned over local reality with concern, fondness, disagreement, and occasional irritation. They did not know envy had tried to turn their world into a doorway for aberration, although they felt it, and they did not know why so many of them had begun wanting better things at the same time. They only knew that life before the Dark Awakenings now seemed smaller than it had before. And that is one signature of the cosmic tsunami. To mortals, it does not always look like truth, but sometimes it simply makes their old lies uncomfortable to live inside, until they embrace higher logic and some form of unity. Karona was not united. It was not saved forever, and was not wise, but Karona had been given a chance to become more than the sum of frightened maps and old borders. For a planet, this is no small mercy. For humans, it is almost extravagant.
Hello, hello, hello. It's me again, Envy. Just reminding you one last time to like and subscribe to the channel. I hope you liked the show. And if you didn't, I'm sending in the Kraken. What's the Kraken, you ask? Well, you just have to tune in for the next few episodes and find out. So please, pardon me as I remind you to like and subscribe.